What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So we are now only 4 days away from Christmas, so I thought it'd be a fun idea to go through all 32 teams and say what they want most for Christmas, whether that's one player to completely turn it around, an entire group of players, a coach to do better. We're going to go through it right now, starting in the Pacific Division. And up first, I have the LA Kings, and it's pretty obvious. They want 2022-2023 Pierre-Luc Dubois. Right now, he's kind of shitting the bed. He has 12 points in 29 games, puts him on pace for 34. That is not acceptable. Yes, he is. We weren't really expecting the same level of production because they're so deep at center. He is playing that 3C role, even though he's getting paid at $8.5 million. But you definitely expected more. He needs to be at the bare minimum 45-point pace, probably 50-point pace. And if they can get that out of him, they probably have the best 3C lineup in the entire NHL, and it would really solidify them as a contender. Again, they're still playing fantastic, but that's with their $8.5 million center. Very disappointing to start the season. He hasn't been horrible because obviously he doesn't have the talent on his wings, but it's definitely been unacceptable. Up next for the Oilers, a starting goalie. It's pretty standard. Right now, they're getting .884 save percentage from the team on the whole, which is the second worst in the entire NHL. Ken Holland probably needs to go out and end up trading for a goalie at this year's deadline. The offense is still pretty prolific. I think the defense is the best it's been in like 2 to 3 years, so I don't think you can always improve those areas, but the goaltending is so prevalent, and he needs to go out and get a goalie. The Seattle Kraken, they just need a superstar. I know it's like easier said than done. They need a superstar forward. This team has a bunch of good second liners, maybe a couple first liners like a Jared McCann, but they don't have any high-end talent, and that's what wins in this league at the end of the day. Even the Vegas Golden Knights, they didn't have a top 15 player in the league, but Mark Stone, Jack Eichel, Pietrangelo are still superstar level players. The Seattle Kraken right now, they've played 34 games. Their leading points getter is Oliver Bjorkstrand at 26 points, which is only like low 60-point pace. And their leading goal guy is Jared McCann with 14 goals in 36 games. They just need an actual playmaker. Maybe Beniers is not taking that next step. Maybe Shane Wright can maybe be that. But they're eventually going to have to make a splash because right now it's a bunch of above-average players. There's no elite talent. Ron Francis needs to do something. The Vegas Golden Knights, they just need good health. They just need a clean bill of health. You look at them last year, Eichel missed a bunch of games. Pietrangelo missed like 10 games. Theodore's always missing games from time to time. Mark Stone. If they can just get a clean bill of health, they're probably going to finish as a top 3 team in the entire NHL and entering into the playoffs, be one of the prime favorites. Just stay healthy because with the guys on their roster, there is a big track record of them not being able to stay healthy. The Anaheim Ducks, a healthy and a Trevor Zegras that is back on track. 2 points in 12 games. He's obviously been dealing with an injury. And although their other pieces have played fantastic, which has kind of made us forget about how disappointing Zegras was to start, he is still at least the marketing face of the team. And in terms of, the dude put up back-to-back 60-point seasons, so he needs to bounce back so Ducks fans know, because they were expecting, obviously, him to be a legit first liner, and he has been for the first 2 years, but it obviously was a disappointing start to the season. So heading into the back two-thirds, almost back half at this point, they need Trevor Zegras to come back and really remind everybody on the fan base in the overall NHL that this kid still is elite. He's only 22 years old. I still think he's going to be a stud, but Ducks fans are definitely wishing for that. The Calgary Flames, they're not wishing for Lindholm and Hanifin to play good. They're wishing for good trade-offs. They want good trade offers for those two, as well as Chris Tanev. At this point, they're kind of embracing the rebuild, and those three need to get traded. And those two in particular need to get first-round picks and then some. Not saying the Zadorov trade was horrendous. Zadorov is a bottom-pairing guy, but only getting a third-round pick was a little bit disappointing. I know the Toffoli deal has definitely aged better in the sense that Sharon Govich is playing better, but still only got a third-round pick. I like the guy they took at the third round, but I don't think that was a fantastic haul either. It has kind of worked out. But when looking at Lindholm, Hanifin, Tanev, you need to hit those out of the park in terms of what they're building and really kill the draft, obviously, this summer. The San Jose Sharks, they want William Eklund to continue this very solid stretch that he's playing. He struggled to start off. I think he had 2 points in his first 10 games. He has 13 points in his last 20. That's pretty damn good. He is the first NHL-wise future of the franchise, if you get what I'm saying. He's not. Will Smith is going to be better. Whoever they get this year is going to be better. But William Eklund was that first blue chip prospect that they got in the 2021 draft. So if he can continue to produce, and then once Will Smith makes the jump, once the guy who they draft this year makes the jump in 2024, 2025, whenever they make the team, William Eklund should, if he continues this pace, will be able to, not mentor them, but will be able to build chemistry with that guy and eventually be an elite first liner, and he's definitely trending that way. I really liked him in the draft process. I had him as my 3rd overall prospect, and I'm really liking what I'm seeing of late. So San Jose Sharks, they don't really care about the rest of the team. Obviously, they want a guy like Logan Couture to get healthy, but William Eklund right now is really, for the most part, like the one young guy that they care about, so they want him to take that next step. And lastly, for the Vancouver Canucks, they want Brock Besser to somehow sustain this insane pace that he's going at. He obviously has 23 goals in 33 games. He's shooting at 24.7%, which I don't think is very sustainable. Could he get to 40, 45? I think he's going to get to 40 at this point. Can he get to 45? It's definitely possible. Maybe even sniff 50. I posted a Rocket odds today. He's not winning the Rocket, but they want Brock Besser to continue to be that wagon, both on the power play as well as even strength that he's been this season. Not sure it's going to happen, but if he continued to be an elite goal scorer, the Canucks are going to cruise to the playoffs and cruise to a divisional spot, especially with Edmonton kind of struggling of late. Moving on to the Central Division, the Winnipeg Jets. They want a healthy Kyle Connor. Kyle Connor was playing fantastic for them before, obviously. I think he hurt his MCL. He's only out 6 to 8 weeks, and I think like 2 of those weeks have already passed. But him and Scheifele were playing so elite to start the season, and thankfully they got Velarde back as soon as they lost Connor. So that Velarde, Ehlers, and Scheifele line has been absolutely cooking. But Kyle Connor is the best player, at least the best skater on this team, and in order for them to maybe even contend with the Avalanche and the Stars in the division, which they're doing right now, they're going to need a healthy Kyle Connor in order to do that. Chicago Blackhawks, Lucas Reichel, they just want Lucas Reichel to progress. He's kind of not progressing right now. He had a very good end of last year. I think he had like 14 points in 25 games or something. He only has 7 in 30 games right now. I'm not ready to give up on him by any means. He's a 2020 draftee, but people talked about him not as a sleeper, as a Calder, but saying that he was going to go north of 40 points playing with Connor Bedard. He hasn't really played a ton with Connor Bedard, but overall, it's definitely been a little bit of a disappointing year from Lucas Reichel. I think a guy like Kevin Korchinski as a defenseman with that rough defense core, he's been fine. He has 27 points in 25 games or something like that. I'm not worried about him, especially because he's a 2022 draftee. I kind of expected more from Reichel this season, and it really hasn't happened. So he's definitely not, at this point, with the next 2 years, they're going to get top 5 picks. He's not the core key piece like a Bedard or like a Korchinski, but he's definitely going to be an important either top line or second line guy for the next 5 to 10 years for the Blackhawks, assuming he pans out. But if he doesn't really show it over the next 50 games this season, not saying his career's over, but that definitely lowers my confidence in him to eventually be an elite first line talent. The Dallas Stars, they got to get a number 2 for Miro Heiskanen, man. This has been the problem with this team for the past, obviously there's other stuff, but the last year and a half, they've gone into the season with Ryan Suter or Lindell, who I still think Lindell's a very good defenseman, as their number 2. Ryan Suter's the second leader in ice time right now. Thomas Harley has definitely shown some progression. He's 3rd on the team in ice time, but right now, Miro Heiskanen's playing 25 minutes a night. The next guy's Ryan Suter at like 20 minutes and 10 seconds. They need to get a number 2. They need to take some of the load off of Miro Heiskanen and just bolster that defense core. It's not a bad defense core because, again, Miro Heiskanen is such a stud, but it's definitely kind of an average to maybe even below average. So they need to go out. I don't know if it happened at the trade deadline this year. It can, actually. Get a Noah Hannafin. Slide him in. That's kind of your number 2. I don't think Hannafin's a number 2 would be that good of a number 2 compared to other playoff teams like Colorado Avalanche per se, but they need to get a legit number 2. They need to bolster their defense core overall. The Minnesota Wild, they need 2022 Kirill Kaprizov back, man. I've championed for this guy for so long, considering obviously 47 goals, 61 assists in that 2022 season. He was like 4th in the entire league in points. Was a Hart finalist in my opinion, but that player has slowly started to fade away. Last year, 65 games, he had 40 goals and 35 assists for 75 points, which was still good, but not quite as good as the previous year. And now he has 10 goals and 17 assists for 27 games and just 30 games. He's on pace for like 75 points. That is not the Kirill Kaprizov that I've seen the previous 2 years. And obviously, Minnesota's goalie tandem has been pretty disappointing. Gustafsson has been playing much better of late, even though he got killed, I think, what was it, Tuesday or Wednesday night? But Gustafsson has been picking it up, but they need their superstar piece, especially because they don't have a ton of depth because they have $12 to $13 million in those Suter and Parise buyouts. So they need their superstar to kind of carry some of the load, and he is clearly not doing it right now. And as a result, the Minnesota Wild are out of a playoff spot. That Colorado Avalanche, they need some team chemistry. They need some type of like team bonding, team therapy. Because obviously, let me throw it up again. Devontae has had some choice words. You had the incident with Mikko Rantanen's was calling out, or Arturi Lekkonen's dad was calling out Mikko Rantanen's work ethic over the summer. Then Mikko Rantanen called him out to the, like, it is just a mess. And it's crazy because they're still on pace for like 102 points this season. But like for them, that's like the building's burning. Like that is unacceptable. So they just need to relax, take the Christmas break, send some nice text messages to each other, and just all come together as a team, because I'm not worried about them in terms of really, I mean, I guess their bottom six is pretty disappointing. You definitely would want more bottom six scoring, but I still think they are one of the best teams in the entire NHL. They just need to get on the same page, because right now it is losing to Chicago, and then those comments after, it is all over the place. It is not good for a team that has been kind of the cream of the crop for the past 2 to 3 years in the NHL, to see this not unravel, but be pretty bad. I'm concerned. They are my Stanley Cup picks. They better pull it together. It's unacceptable. The St. Louis Blues, they need Jordan Kyrou of the previous 2 seasons to show up. Obviously, Jordan Kyrou got booed a week ago. I don't justify the booing. It was on top of the Berube comments, as well as the fact he's just not playing to what he's capable of. Right now, he has 21 points in 31 games. Last year, the dude had 37 goals, 36 assists for 73 points in 78 games. And he has 21 points this season, but only 6 of those are goals. So when looking at it, Robert Thomas is playing great. He has like 32 points in 30 games. He's carrying the load in terms of the offense right now. But a guy like Jordan Kyrou that you expect to be the 1B to a Robert Thomas is not playing to that level, and as a result, they've struggled. The Nashville Predators need a consistent UC Saros. He's been one of the most consistent goalies in the entire league the previous 2 or 3 seasons. That has not been the case this year. His first 14 games, he had a 5-9 record with an 8.92 and a 3.0. His last 11, he has a 9-2 record with a 9.26 and a 2.19. So he has been bad starter, bad backup first 14 games. Now he's back to Vezina form. He needs to level it out. You don't have to be 926 going sporadically like this. If he can give them just 920, 918, hell, even 916 goaltending for the next 50 games, Nashville's probably going to be a playoff team, considering some of their other pieces have stepped up. UC Saros, who has been the most consistent guy, and he is playing good of late, has been very inconsistent, and as a result, they've fluctuated in terms of started out okay, then kind of went on a losing tear, now going on a winning tear. And lastly, the Arizona Coyotes, similarly, they need Connor Ingram to be legit. Connor Ingram has a 9.19 right now, which is really out of nowhere. People are expecting maybe that from Vejmelka. They need Connor Ingram to be a legit starter, and then they can really fight for that playoff spot. As of right now, they're in a battle for the last wild card spot, and they're going to need good goaltending because their forwards and defensemen have really exceeded expectations. Moving on to the Atlantic Division, the Boston Bruins. I'm going to go with the first line center. Again, I don't think Zacha and Coyle are bad. Again, they're both hovering around like 55 to 65, 70-ish points. They're actually playing pretty decent. But again, when you look at the legit contenders that usually go far in the playoffs, what do they have in common? They usually have a legit number 1 center. And just overall, I feel like Boston, the goaltending's fantastic. The defense core maybe hasn't been as good as last year, but it's also just not as good as last year. I think when looking, again, after losing Bergeron, Bertuzzi, Krejci, they need to bolster the center position. They need to get that legit center. Is it out there? Probably not, but they definitely need to bring in at least some type of elite top 6 forward for this season. The Senators, they need to just stable coaching from Jacques Martin. They don't need him to be Jack Adams level. They're probably going to miss the playoffs this year, but they just need some type of stability, some type of solid system, not a DJ Smith system, and play 55% points percentage hockey the rest of the way. Show that they can be a capable team over a 50-game sample size. Again, I hope they make the playoffs. I hope they somehow prove the entire world wrong. I would victory lap to holy hell if they somehow do. But when looking at them, it's probably not going to happen, but if they can actually show some life with Martin, they can attract a very good coach this summer, or maybe even bring back Martin. He is like 71 years old, but given the coaching lifespan, he's probably not going to be there for a goddamn decade. But Martin just needs to stabilize the group. Alfredsson needs to work on that power play and the offense as a whole. And I think that would be a pretty successful, not a successful season by Ottawa because it's absolutely off the rails right now, but a successful Martin tenure in the last 50 games or so. The Florida Panthers, they badly want and need 2022-2023 Matthew Tkachuk back, 109 points in the regular season, carries them offensively to the Stanley Cup final. Right now he has 5 goals, 17 assists for 22 points in 31 games, which is on pace for 13 goals and 45 assists for 58 points. He did that in probably the back half of last regular season. He put up those numbers. It has just not been acceptable. Thankfully, guys like Reinhart has basically replaced his production, as crazy as it is to say. So he has kind of got bailed out in that sense. But you look at the Panthers right now with Reinhart playing as good as he is. Imagine Tkachuk was even 75-80% of himself last year. Right now, they would be probably battling for the goddamn President's Trophy. So Tkachuk, I'm confident he is eventually going to turn it back on. Especially they should make a playoff spot pretty easily at this point. So it's not like you need to turn it on or else we're going to miss playoff season over and not the end of the world. I think he's going to get back to at least a top 20 player in the league. Maybe not top 5 like last year that he was, but I think he's definitely going to bounce back. Detroit Red Wings, they need a number 1 goalie. Right now, Ville Husso and Alex Lyon are both out until after Christmas. But just in general, Reimer actually has been pretty good. Lyon's been pretty good. But it is clear that Ville Husso, I've said it a ton this offseason, Ville Husso is not that guy. Obviously, Reimer is not a long-term solution or even an Alex Lyon. Yzerman has drafted now 2 goalies. He drafted Trey Augustine, 38th overall this most recent year, and Sebastian Cossa, obviously in 2021 at 16th overall. Cossa I'm a little bit low on. I think Trey Augustine can eventually be that guy. But right now, if they're actually going to try to win, they're going to need a legit goalie. Right now, obviously, Ville Husso has horrible stats as the number 1 guy. Their team has really impressed me. I'm going to be honest. I was kind of wrong about them. But right now in net, it's very apparent that is what is clearly holding them back and is going to be the reason why they're probably going to miss the playoffs pretty easily. The Tampa Bay Lightning, they need an actual third line. Right now, obviously, you have a very good top 6, but that third line's kind of a disaster right now. These guys like Tyler Mott, Connor Sheary, Tanner Jeannot, Michael Easimont. It's okay, but when you look at when Tampa won those cups, it was Blake Coleman. It was Barclay Goodrow when he was actually good. It was Yanni Gourde. It was one of the best third lines ever assembled. It was fantastic. They really exposed other teams' third lines and just were able to also cover the opponent's top lines and really shut them down defensively. That is not the case right now. And obviously Tampa was much better back then, but they need an actual third line. They actually need some depth scoring right now. That's what they want. And that's what hopefully they can somehow pull off at the deadline with Julien Brisebois. The Montreal Canadiens fan base, they want to see Cole Caulfield score some more goals. He really hasn't been himself per se. He only has, I believe, 8 goals. Yeah, he only has 8 goals in 31 games, which puts him on pace for around 21, 22 on the season. This is a guy that last year had 26 in 48 games. He was absolutely balling out. He was on pace for 48, 49 goals in a full season. And this season, it hasn't really happened. I still think he's a very good player, but if he is going to be, right now at least, probably has the most offensive talent in the entire system in terms of forwards, if he's going to be a potential number 1 or number 2 option on an actual contender in a couple of years in terms of forwards, he needs to start progressing. He needs to start scoring more goals. So Canadians want to see one of their fan favorites start racking up more goals. Buffalo Sabres, Devin Levi, hopefully this recent play, they are hoping, they are wanting that this recent play for him that has been very good is not a fluke. Obviously, he started off so bad. Went to Rochester, started playing better, and I think in his last 5 starts since being brought up, he has a .914 save percentage. So if they can actually get the goaltender of their future in Devin Levi, that's fantastic because that is obviously a lot of things went wrong with this team. They always were shallow in terms of forwards and defense, but they have a ton of picks and prospects at this point coming up to fill at least the forward voids they can always spend in defensive free agency, but they need that legit goalie. Devin Levi had these rampant expectations, I say rampant for a reason because they were unjustified. He was 21 years old, but he actually has looked very good in the past 5, 6, 7 games for the most part. So if he is legit, Buffalo Sabres are going to be on their way from being a very good team. And lastly, for the Toronto Maple Leafs, they just want a healthy defense core. You could also say just Joseph Woll getting healthy, but the defense core has been absolutely ravaged with injuries. Liljegren, Giordano, Timmins, and McCabe have all missed 5+ games. Lilligren's been out. I think he's still out. Yeah, he's been out since like the Marchand hit, I think. So when looking at that, they have not been able to stay healthy. Some of the guys that they brought in, like Lagesson, have been playing pretty well, but if it comes playoff time and they're still banged up to holy hell, that is definitely going to hurt them in terms of the playoffs, in terms of playing playoff defensive minutes. You're going to want your more veteran guys in there taking care of business. On to the Metro Division. The Washington Capitals, all they want for Christmas is Alexander Ovechkin to start scoring some goals, getting back on that goal record pace, and the power play to be better as a result. Right now, the power play is the third worst in the entire NHL, and its main reason because Alexander Ovechkin is not scoring like he usually does. He's obviously the power play god, just sets up in one spot. He has not been able to do that this season. He's on pace for, I think, 14 goals. Yeah, he has 5 goals in 31 games. He's on pace for 14 goals, which, shocker, it would be his lowest in an entire season. I don't think he's going to stay that bad, but the days of Ovechkin going for north of 40, maybe even 35 might be over. I still think he's going to get the goal record. He's only, like 60-something away. So he's going to get it. It's not a big deal. But in terms of the Capitals, they're actually a pretty good team right now. If they want to continue to make the playoffs or make the playoffs this season, they're going to need Ovechkin to really start scoring goals. For the Columbus Blue Jackets, all their fans want is to play your young guys more. This has pissed me off so much. Obviously, David Jiricek, they did end up winning like 8-4, but David Jiricek got healthy scratched after he had 3 points in his last 2 games. Adam Fantilli got bumped down to like the 4th line like last week. Ken Johnson, Vincent just wasn't even playing him to start the season for the most part. He's playing like 10 minutes a night, gets sent down to the AHL, absolutely tears it up. Now he has 8 points in his last 6 games with the big boy club. So when looking at it, the Columbus Blue Jackets fans probably realize their season this year, it's absolutely cooked. Just play the young guys because they do have a shit ton of young talent. Play your young guys, develop your young guys. That's the future. They have a bunch of veterans that they're prioritizing over those guys. It makes absolutely no sense. Play the young guys. The fans want the young guys. Philadelphia Flyers, they want to see Sean Walker. This one's pretty bad, I'm not going to lie. They want to see Sean Walker continue to play better so they can trade him for a haul. He had a fantastic start to the season. He's still playing very good. He has 11 points and has been great defensively. He's their pending unrestricted free agent, and he's their one trade chip this year. I don't think the Flyers are going to end up making the playoffs probably. I know they're playing great, but this isn't the makeup of a Stanley Cup legit contender, and considering they did sell pretty heavily last offseason, I think Danny Briere is eventually going to offload him. You obviously want to see some of the young guys continue to impress, but in terms of this season, kind of getting assets for Sean Walker will be very important for the Philadelphia Flyers. The Carolina Hurricanes, all they want for Christmas is Freddie Anderson to come back. You know how I mentioned the Edmonton Oilers having an .884 save percentage as a team, and that was second worst in the entire league? Carolina Hurricanes are in first at an .880. And Frederik Andersen, even though he was playing bad before that whole blood clots thing, he had an .894, which is usually horrible, but it was 1.4% higher. Yeah, 1.4% higher. Sorry, I just meant the math. 1.4% higher than the other Carolina Hurricanes goalies. So when looking at that, he might not be that good. He might not be Frederik Andersen from 2 years ago when he was fourth in the Vezina ballots. They just need him to be a somewhat competent goaltender because Kochetkov and Ranta, especially Ranta, have not been able to do that this year. So they need some stability in net. We always talk about in previous years how the Carolina Hurricanes could roll with a no-name in net. That has not been the case this year. They need Freddie Andersen to come back in a pretty big way. The Devils, I don't really have too much, but they just need they want and need just a competent defense core night in and night out. I think this has been the one problem with this team. Far too many odd man rushes, far too many breakdowns in the defensive zone. Blame it on Lindy Ruff, blame it on the talent. Obviously, losing Dougie Hamilton doesn't hurt them from a defensive standpoint. It hurts them from an offensive standpoint. But just overall, Nemec has looked good, but overall, they want a better defense core. For the Rangers, they want to see Alexis Lafreniere continue to develop and play like he did in the first 14 games. He had 7 goals, 4 assists in 14 games, which again, 41 goal pace, high 50s point pace. But in the last 16 games, he has 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points. So he really has not fallen off, but definitely slowed down. He's still playing with Trocheck and Panarin. We all thought this was going to be the Lafreniere breakout year after that amazing start, but it has kind of come back down to earth in terms of now he has 17 points in like 32, 33 games, back to around this paces of last year. So just seeing Lafreniere continue to take that next step, especially because he's under contract next year at a pretty dirt cheap, like mid $2 million deal. If you were going to get him legitimately putting up like 30 goal pace and 25 assist pace, that was going to be fantastic, a cheap deal for the Rangers, but that unfortunately has not continued. My New York Islanders, all they want for Christmas is the third period in overtime to no longer exist. In terms of, they've blown like 13 leads and obviously have 9 shootout and OT losses. So just scrap the game at the end of the second period. Just have 2 periods, first and second. They'd be the best team in the entire league. But on a more serious note, it's obviously Sorokin getting back to Sorokin level of play. He has not been exactly himself this year compared to himself last year, second in the entire Vezina vote. If he can just be 85, 90% of the goaltender that he was last year, the Islanders should make the playoffs. Varley is playing very good, but Sorokin has to be that guy. And lastly, the Pittsburgh Penguins need Ricard Raquel to be literally like 50% of himself last year. Right now, he has 4 assists in 18 games, 0 goals. After last year having 28 goals and 32 assists, they need him to really step up because right now, all of their other core pieces, like their 6 core pieces, are producing pretty well. But Ricard Raquel is not, and as a result, he's not the sole reason why they've been struggling, but that is a guy that you rely on for at least 50 points, at least like 25 and 25. He has not even given them that. And that's overall what every team wants for Christmas. This has been a long-ass video, Jesus Christ. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.